This is a gorilla. Your folks are both gorillas. You are a gorilla.
They propose revisions that always seem to involve less respect for the rights of free nations and less freedom for the individual. These matters would be difficult under any circumstances. They are further complicated by a trend in Western countries away from global engagement and democratic confidence. Parts of Europe have developed an identity crisis. We have seen insolvency, economic stagnation, youth unemployment, anger about immigration, resurgent ethno-nationalism, and deep questions about the meaning and durability of the European Union. America is not immune from these trends. In recent decades, public confidence in our institutions has declined. Our governing class has often been paralyzed. The American dream of upward mobility seems out of reach for some who feel left behind in a changing economy. Bigotry seems emboldened. Politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, a secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets.
Now, as you may know, my running mate, Tim, is Catholic and went to Jesuit schools. And one of the things he and I have talked about is this idea from the Jesuits of the Magus, the more, the better.
Welcome, everybody, to another reading of Code Word Barbelon. I'm gathered here with my two brothers in Christ there in Europe today, and we are in the middle of Skull and Bones, chapter 34, I believe it is. Skull and Bones is part of who I am, quote unquote, highest moral authority. So, Jörg and Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Brett. Thanks for the invitation. And Michael is okay too, I hope. Some few hundred kilometers away from me, but he lives closer to me than you live to Tom Fress. So,
oh, wow. Good.
Yeah, we two are quite close.
That's good.
So maybe we have a chance to see each other once.
Sure.
Okay. Yes, I'm fine. Thank you very much, Jörg. And I'm pleased to hear you, Brett. And also, I'm glad to be on this video and this show. And first of all, I like to get a message out to all the listeners, because I would like to advise you to get a copy of this very, very extraordinary book, Code Word Barbelon by P.D. Stewart, because you see, you don't know how long it's been available. It will be available, and maybe it's someday it's out of print or unavailable anymore for some unknown reasons. So I would hardly suggest to get your copy.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael.
Absolutely. Yeah. But you mean strongly, not hardly. Hardly means something else in English.
Okay.
Anyway,
yes,
I was making the same discussion today, I think, when I was reading about in the book of Griesinger. It was today or yesterday. And before we go back to Code Word Barbelon, the wonderful book of P.D. Stewart, I want to read to you a little part of the chapter that I read today in the book of Griesinger. Of course, in the English version, because I'm reading the German version, but I want to read to you a little part of the English version that I read today in German. That is in book 2, in chapter 2, the very first part, about the power of the Jesuits in Europe in the time of their foundation. And I have a special reason why I'm saying that, why I'm reading this. And I have a way of explaining what I'm reading here. And I'd like to see if our listeners and viewers of this video, as well as you, Brett and Michael, understand it the same way that I do. Yeah. So I'm going to read a little quote from that book. It's on page 168 in the PDF of, I don't know how many pages, because this is a PDF of 800 something pages, because it comes from Vatican Assassins and it's more than this one book. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so it's about the modes the Jesuits used to make themselves, to establish themselves in society at that time. Yeah. The fifth mode by which the Jesuits gained admission all over Europe was not to be sought among the cultivated classes, but, on the contrary, among the profanum vulgus, means the common man, and consisted in a sort of fanaticism into which the pious fathers knew how to work themselves. Thus, it was not all uncommon for 2 or 3 of them to be found running through the streets by night or day in half-naked condition, bawling out loudly that owing of the sins of mankind the end of all things was at hand. On which account they flogged themselves with whips so unmercifully that streams of blood flowed from their bodies. As a matter of course, when such a spectacle was enacted, it was sure to collect a great crowd upon them. And while at first some people laughed at their proceedings, and many from disgust turned away from them disdainfully, this disposition at length gave way to another feeling, namely that of astonishment, if not indeed admiration. The padres flogged and chastised their bodies to such an extent that even a stone might have pitied them. Should they not then be looked upon as holy saints? They, indeed, transgressed all laws of propriety in exhibiting themselves in this half-naked condition, and one often felt inclined to give them a kick in order to make them understand this. But on being thus treated, they would at once, in the most humble manner, express themselves thankful for the well-deserved punishment, and thereupon present both of their cheeks to the chastiser for fresh blows to be given them. But enough of these silly and ecstatic follies of the Jesuits, which were not, indeed, without effect. The more so that their proceedings became contagious to an extent that whole troops of people ran after them, similarly flogging themselves and calling out, "Alas, the sinners! Alas, the great sinful city!" Such were the means adopted by the Jesuits for establishing themselves as a great power in the Catholic countries of Europe, and having now analyzed all appertaining thereto, I proceed to enter upon the subject more in detail. This is where this part of the chapter ends. And when I read this, that 2 or 3 of them were half naked, running through the streets and flagellizing themselves with whips, and threw themselves bloody, and by that, of course, attracted a lot of people, I could not help myself to think of that actually is what is today done through the complete entertainment system.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
Yeah, you're right.
No doubt.
Yeah, I'm not so wrong when I think about that, right?
Not at
No,
all.
no.
That
not
was
at
a
all.
comment. That was a comment that I then made in German. That I said, well, you know, what we have here, this is the precursor of all the Hollywood movies, especially when you think of, like, for example, television series like Going Bad. You know that one?
Mm-hmm.
Where you have this chemistry teacher who receives the news that he has unhealable cancer, incurable cancer, and therefore becomes a meth dealer and meth producer, and he is going from a little bad to devilish bad through the series, through the different seasons of the series, but the people still have how do you say that? Not only compassion,
Mm-hmm.
but even sympathy for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have sympathy for them. And when you think of a song the Rolling Stones put out in the 60s, that one was called Sympathy for the Devil.
Mm.
And that is exactly what the Jesuits are working off. And, you know, we are speaking here about the time of the mid-16th century. There has not been a camera or something like that invented. But, of course, they had plays, you know, like in theater and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Jesuits here absolutely took advantage of influencing as Griesinger writes it here, profanum vulgus means the profane man. Yeah, vulgus, you know, from the vulgar, from the vulgar tongue and the vulgar Bible, and profanum, profane. This is just the
you know, Jörg, when
man
you
on the
read
street,
that word pious, I thought, wow, okay, that says a lot too.
Yeah. So anyway, I really think that this is the very first form of entertainment, and to catch the people with things to get them to their side, to get them to do their bidding. And in the end of this little article, it says, the more so that their proceedings became contagious to an extent that whole troops of people ran after them. And what are the people doing today when the new iPhone 10 comes out? Standing 2 days in front of a closed shop, entertainment, just to get a glance at the stuff, and eager to spend $1,000 or whatever on the next iPhone or something like that. People, when they are going to movies like Star Wars, where you have sympathy with the dark side.
Yeah.
When I was young, and I remember that I was watching Batman. And the Batman series, and the last 20 years there have been a lot of Batman movies made, but when you look back at them now, you see Batman turning black, and you see him turn to a bad side, to a dark side,
right.
But still the people have sympathy for them, and this is exactly what the Jesuits did here. In other means, they were using the means that they had, but you know, the end justifies the means. So that's all I just wanted to say, or wanted to read as a little introduction to get the people's attention, the ones who listen and watch this video.
Now, what?
That's the point.
I'm sorry. What year was this happening, Jörg?
I don't know, but he speaks about the very first time, so that is about the mid 1600s, 1550s, something.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, he doesn't put in. He doesn't put in a year
to, right?
with that. But it's about you know, this the second chapter is about the powerful influence of the Jesuits in Europe. You know, so I was just finishing the Jesuit missions in Asia, Africa, and America, and now it goes into chapter 2, the powerful influence of the Jesuits in Europe, and this is an introduction into that, because it continues in the next part, the powerful influence of the Jesuits in Italy. And now we are going to see how they did that in different countries. So we are seeing Italy, Portugal, Spain, England, Germany throughout this chapter the next time. But this was just the introduction to the chapter. And so they did that. He doesn't even say where they did that, in which streets, doesn't matter. Everywhere they went. You know?
Yeah, I think Jörg, if I may stumble in, I think it's first of all is to generate a kind of attraction. So there are different people, and so many people are wondering. The common people are wondering what's that kind of stuff. It's unknown. They're curious. They want to know more. And then on the second, I think people are attracted to these curiosities. And the complete society develops in a kind of unmorality, like Sodom and Gomorrah. If you compare now 2080 with, let's say, 50 years ago, people are more aggressive because they don't have any high moral standards anymore.
Absolutely.
And if you can, for example, look upon the automobile industry. If you look how nice little cars were built, and nowadays very aggressive cars are made with very much power and very high profile, and everyone likes to get along in this society. And if you like to get along in this society, you have to be focused on your ego. You don't focus on the community.
No.
Yeah, to help each other, but the main goal for the most of the people, in my humble opinion, is they focus on their ego.
Yeah, on themselves. You know, it is self. Self is the new community. Yeah,
I like the way you said that. High profile. That says it all, right there.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right when you have a look at, about the cars, for example, when you see the new lines of the Mercedes cars in the C-Class and the E-Class, and
absolutely.
you see the new BMW 3.5s and these series, they are all getting more and more aggressive. Yeah, and just to take an absolute example of that, look at the last 10 models or something, or special models Lamborghini put out. If that is not a devilish car, I don't know what is.
They look like a snake. They look like a snake with their eyes in front, and you see cars are nothing else than mobile homes. So it's a kind of your personality. When you buy a car, you like to express your personality, in my opinion, and so many people fell for that. They fell for prestige. They like to. They like to put their inside outside. I don't know how to explain in English better,
right.
but some
they like to wear it like clothing.
I think that tells much about one's personality, and that's also I may say so because I now drive a very small car, and in my past I used to drive very sporty cars also. So I got at one point, if I may add this, we got several animals here, and at 2-3 years ago, I got a visit from a customer, and this customer drove with a very, very expensive Italian sports car. I don't name any marks now, but I was standing. Brands now. We stood at the street, and I hold my little cat in my arms, and at the moment he started his car, and his exhaust was roaring. All animals got away as soon as they could, and I was thinking to myself, my gosh, that's not natural. What do I have to? What do I do here? It's not natural to scare the animals because the car was so loud. It was so loud because he liked to get the attraction of his personality. He liked to express himself in that way, and I have cut off the connection to him because in many things I find him that he's a very big liar, and so that was a very good example for me, which tells me that something is totally wrong, because it's very unnatural if you like to get your car more louder to attract people. What's the deal?
Well, that's right. There's a lot of personalities like that in America, where I live. And growing up in the city and being somewhat of an intellectual, I guess, I always look at that as kind of a abrasive personality, and people are lashing out at others for attention like that,
Yes, but it's a show off. It's
right.
Nothing
That's
else as
what
a
it
show
is.
off.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would like to get to the core. I would like to get to the core, and would like to help God. That I would like that God helps me to develop myself in the right way, and it would be, I think, in a way to help the community and to help my beloved friends and family, and not that I'm focused on myself entirely. That cannot be right, because you see, for example, almost everybody is raised from father and mother. So, and in the end, if they are getting old, they often need your help. So you can get anything in return. You can make anything. You can help them, and I think that's very natural to do that. But many people turn their backs on their parents, for example, and of older people, because they are weak and they require lots of work and lots of time. And I think to myself, okay, but it's a very natural thing to do that, because if you are small and little and you can't help yourself, then you rely on others too, and so it's the other way around. And I think it's a thing which would be an expression of Christianity to think so, and not to think of yourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but in today's society, we have the community to take care of the elder and the weak. We just put them in homes, We just don't take care of our own family anymore.
No, that's really the sad truth. That's really the sad truth.
That's the way this society turns,
It's socially acceptable. Yeah.
There are not many people like, for example, like I do. When a few years ago my mother was amputated in the leg and couldn't live for herself anymore, that I said to her, well, no problem, you come live with me. I mean,
right.
I thought that's natural because she gave the years of her young life to raise me up. So now I am there for her. To me, that is absolutely natural, but that's not the sense that we have in this society anymore. No?
I know. It's
you're absolutely
really lopsided, really strange.
Yes, and I can also second comment is about animals, because it's life too. So it's I cannot comprehend if someone has an animal and is about to put it to sleep finally, to make drowsy. It's my dictionary says it's to put him to eternal sleep. You know what I mean?
Oh yes.
And that conflicts to my belief, because it's written, "Thou shalt not kill."
That's right.
Yeah, but normally people don't use euthanasia on dogs or cats just for the fun of it, but to spare them from more pain when they are inoperable, sick because of cancer or whatever they have developed. I mean, I had to put a few dogs into euthanasia, and I don't have a bad feeling about that, because I know that was the right decision to save that animal the pain, And in that regard, we always have to make a distinction between man and animal. They are not the same. Man has given a soul, and I don't say that animals are soulless, but there is no resurrection of the animals in the day when Jesus Christ comes. An animal, when it's dead and loses its breath, its soul is gone. And the soul of man has the possibility, through the grace of God, when you accept Jesus Christ, to live on forever in all eternity. That's the difference between man and animal. So I would not put man and animal on the same level, even though I have very high regard for the living animals, because I am vegan. I don't eat any animal products because of that, because I don't want to be part of the cruelty that is done to animals while they are raised to be our lunch or dinner or whatever, just to be consumed for whatever reason we need them. I absolutely detest that, and that's why I'm vegan already for 2018, 7 years already. And but Christly speaking, or biblically speaking, we have to make a distinction between animals and man. Animals are not like man. They don't have a soul like man that lives on forever or can live on forever. But they are, of course, living beings that have feelings, that have characters, that have personality, and that are enjoying life, and that are enjoying most and for all being with man, especially when there are domiciled animals like dogs and cats, or maybe your ferrets, Michael, that you have over there. They enjoy your company, and they are dependent on you, and therefore, of course, you have a responsibility for the animals to raise them in a good way. But animals are not like men. An animal, when it dies, the soul is gone. With man, the soul, I don't say sleeps, but the soul returns to our Father and will be used again in our awakening when we are coming to the resurrection, whether to the first resurrection of the righteous or the second resurrection of the wicked. So that's the difference between man and animal. But okay, we have almost done half an hour of introduction. Is it okay then I start reading in Cold War Babylon right now? Or you,
that'd be great.
You guys have anything else to say on the subject?
No.
I don't want to be the bad teacher who says done now, and now we're going to turn back to the subject at hand. But
No, it's good. It's good, but it's a long chapter here.
it's a long chapter.
It's
I don't
not
even
an
think
easy
that's.
one either.
I don't even think that we will. Maybe we finished that today. It's not so many pages anymore. We read a lot of pages yesterday already, but it's not a race to do that. It's there are things that need to be talked about, and I think it was quite interesting the way that Michael addressed that reading that I did, and that we came to the discussion
Absolutely right.
of the things that he said there. There was nothing wrong with it.
No, it's perfect as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I think there's nothing wrong with here and there speaking a little bit of another subject just on Cold War Babylon. But now we are going to return to the reading. We left off last time on the top of page 345, Faith of the Fathers, from Granddad to President. That's where we are going to start right now. And you guys know that whenever you have a comment, you interrupt me with that. Or when there's something interesting in the footnotes, Brett, that you will mention that, okay?
Okay, we'll do.
George Herbert Walker, founder of the Walker Cup, grandfather of George H.W. Bush and paternal great-grandfather of President George W. Bush, was educated at a Jesuit college in England, Stonyhurst College. Yes, the great-grandfather of President George H. Walker, from 1875 through 1953, known to his family and friends as Bert, attended Stonyhurst College, a severe Jesuit boarding school in the United Kingdom. Stonyhurst, an independent boarding school near Clitheroe, Lancashire, is where the Jesuits first established themselves on English soil. It is the senior Jesuit college in England, so probably like Georgetown University is in the United States of America, that is Stonyhurst to the United Kingdom. It is the senior Jesuit college in England and the English campus of the Jesuit College of St. Omer College in Belgium. And we already know St. Omer because John Carroll attended there. Oh yeah, that's what the author says here. It was there that the first Catholic Archbishop of America, the Jesuit John Carroll, founder of Georgetown University, was trained. Yeah. Stonyhurst College is where the Jesuit provincial resides. It is a long-standing practice at Stonyhurst that students write the Jesuit maxim AMDG, ad majorem Dei gloriam, to the greater glory of God, in the top left-hand corner of any piece of work they do. So, has President Bush followed in the steps of his great-granddad Bert and remained Catholic? Let us hear from his own lips. Quote, "I'm here for a reason," Bush told his chief political aide Karl Rove after the September 11 attacks. A close friend of the president said, "I think in his frame, this is what God has asked him to do." One senior administration official said, quote, "Bush really believes he was placed here to do this as part of a divine plan," unquote. What exactly is Bush's divine mission? Is his divine plan ad majorem Dei gloriam? We need not guess at the answer. Only 2 years into his presidency, and Bush made the following statement when addressing 60 bishops and other church leaders at a reception he hosted at the White House to open Pope's Cultural Center in Washington, D.C. Quote, "The best way to honor Pope John Paul II is to take his teaching seriously and put his words and teachings into action here in America," unquote. 3 years later, in 2004, Bush told a Knights of Columbus gathering that he was their friend in administration and that together they would work to change America. Wasn't that the slogan of Obama a few years later? Change? Is Bush a disguised Romanist, you ask? Really, dear reader, you are far too inquisitive. Now follow closely. Earlier I mentioned the Bush family connection to the Jesuits of Stonyhurst. That information was not complete. I must now complete it. What I omitted to tell you was that the Bush family, quote, were staunch Catholics, and to guarantee they stayed that way, they sent young Bert to Stonyhurst, unquote. Their young men are groomed for leadership in a variety of techniques for advancing the cause of Roman Catholicism among Protestants. Now, let me just stop the reading right here. You know that I started today with a little bit of the reading of the book of Griesinger, yeah? And that was of the last part of that introduction of chapter 2 that I read to you. But when we go to the very first part, it deals with the Jesuits first and for all taking over the education system. And there it deals in a book that is published in 1866 with exactly the same thing. Their young men are groomed for leadership in a variety of techniques and advancing the cause of Roman Catholicism among Protestants. You want to read more on that? Get the book from Griesinger, yeah? And go into book 2, chapter 2 on page, 159 in the PDF I see here, and read that a little bit. Very, very interesting. Maybe I can even do a little excursion into that if you guys want me to, because it's really interesting to read that. Now, Bert Walker became Union Banking Corporation's president, and Union Banking became the Nazi Jesuit money laundering machine. From Jesuit-trained Bert Walker to the Pope-adoring President George W. Bush, does it not all make sense now? On March 23, 2001, the day after promising to put the Pope's teachings into action in America, Mr. Bush spoke at the Catholic University of America, where he reminded his audience that the former president of the Soviet Union had called the Pope, quote, the highest moral authority on earth, unquote. That was Gorbachev at the time. Does Mr. Bush also regard the Pope thus? Intelligent reader, whenever you hear a man express such views as freely as President Bush does, you can be sure that he is either a Jesuit, a tool of the Jesuits, or that he has been poisoned by their maxims. Take your pick. The conclusions are not far different. Such is the strange delirium that comes over those who allow themselves to inhale the Jesuit chloroform. Mr. Bush did not kiss the Pope's slippered toe for no reason at his Skull and Bones initiation. This, dear reader, is the kernel of the whole matter, and we have no further need for the cracking thereof.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
That's hilarious, yeah. Well,
Well, it's serious though too.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let us just read in this book here from Griesinger about the starting of the Jesuit order, how they got a hold on the education system. Because I think what we've just read here, is especially about Stonyhurst and Georgetown University and all that stuff, can help us when we see that it was like that from the beginning of the order. Okay? Is it okay for you guys when I read a little bit of
Please.
this chapter now?
That's
Yeah?
fine.
Yes, go
Okay.
ahead.
It's called The Powerful Influence of the Jesuits in Europe. In the preceding chapter, I have described in what way, by what means, and with what result the Sons of Loyola contrived to spread themselves throughout Asia, Africa, and America. It was otherwise, however, in regard to their extension in Europe, as in this instance, they had to deal with professing Christians and had not to trouble themselves so much with the conversion of unbelievers. They were, at least, unable to establish their power under that insignia. On this account, they at once blotted out this motto on their banner, and in its place wrote in large capital letters, extension and re-establishment of the true faith, that is, of the Roman Catholic religion with the papacy at its head. Here, of course, I made a little comment during the reading, because this is actually the same as they did in Paraguay, where there was no civil government, but they allowed the Indians to have their little civil government, if that government agreed that whenever there was to be made a punishment or anything else, they had to get the confirmation of the padres, of the Jesuits themselves first. So they established a theocracy in Paraguay. The reductions of Paraguay was a theocracy. And what is a theocracy? Well, that is what the nation state of Israel was in the very beginning, when they came over from the 40 years. They wandered through the desert and they entered the Holy Land and established the land of Israel there, and they established it under the leadership of the God of the Bible. That is a theocracy. It is we would now today maybe say probably a Christian. So it's a godly state. It is ruled by only God. But this theocracy is the gain of the Jesuits to have all over the world, and it is the same what the Muslims have, because the Muslims want to install their ISIS, their Islamic State religion everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere they go. And the Roman Catholics want to do the same. And the Jesuits are the shock troops of the Roman Catholic Church doing that for them. So when it says here, extension and re-establishment, because after the Reformation, the power of the Pope was gone in many places. So he had to be re-established with his power of the quote-unquote true faith, that is the Roman Catholic religion with the papacy at its head. That is a theocracy on earth, a heavenly kingdom on earth with God as the ruler, but not the God of the Bible, but according to the Jesuits, the little God in Rome, who is just the vicar of Satan, the God of this world, according to the New Testament. Now, continuing here with Griesinger, he says, "Was not this faith, as I have shown in the first book, in so many places most profoundly shaken? And was there not immediate danger of the great pontiff himself being soon bodily hurled from an almighty throne upon which he had previously sat, and ousted from his hitherto most faithful provinces? In what manner then, and by what means, did the Jesuits now succeed in their object under the motto that they displayed intended for Europe? It was everywhere, indeed, by the same means, so in every country in Europe, and by that to extension also in the United States of America. Bear that in mind. It was everywhere, indeed, by the same means and in the same way, namely, by the establishment of educational institutions, by seizure of the confessional stools of kings, by fighting with heresy, by the incorporation of the most powerful forces into their order, as also by their fanatical influence on the great mass of the people." And we read about that in the beginning of this video. Okay? Now, as regards the founding of educational institutions, here comes the point that I want to make. Their method of procedure was as follows. Listen closely. They entered into a town by twos or threes, not indeed on horseback or in a carriage, richly and expensively attired, but, on the contrary, on foot, without shoes and stockings, in mean clothing, and with such a misable appearance that it was impossible to refuse them to give alms. It was thus that their exemplar Ignatius had first made his appearance, and it was thus also that they presented themselves in public. They did not plight at inns. I can sometimes it's very bad printed here. They did not alight at inns or at the houses of the rich, even when pressingly invited. No, on the contrary, they made their way to the hospital and to the poorhouse, considering these the most miserable quarters to be but too good indeed for them. They tended the sick, especially those whom no one else would approach on account of the contagious character of their diseases, and discharged offices of the most menial kind, as the humility of servants became them. As if the humility of servants became them. They, at the same time, did not delay at once They, at the same time, did not delay in at once attaching to themselves some children of the poor, teaching them to read and write, as well as instructing them in the first principles of the Roman Catholic religion. For this instruction they demanded no return, not even the very slightest, knowing full well that gratuitous teaching formed the great power of attention for the poor people to induce them to entrust their children to their care. Soon everyone throughout the whole town began to speak of them and to sign their praises, and the number of their young pupils increased to such an extent that the room where they afforded the instruction became much too small for the purpose. We would willingly know, said the good fathers, receive more children, and had we only more room. And this equally pious as modest wish stirred up to the hearts of the people who were rich, to such a pitch that they purchased a small house for the devout instructors in order to carry on their school therein. Naturally enough, the number of the scholars now went on continually increasing, and thus it became necessary for more Jesuit fathers to come forward in order to satisfy the demands made upon them. They could not well refuse to receive the children of the richer classes of the community and those of higher consideration. Consequently, the subjects for instruction still continued to extend beyond those required merely for the poor and persons of low degree. But apart from this, even what was taught enticed always more and more scholars to come to them, and the small house became presently quite insufficient for their purpose. Those inhabitants of the town who were in good circumstances continued to render assistance to them, and after a year, or at the most a couple of years, the pious fathers were enabled to erect a college which, in regard to its external appearance, had more resemblance to a palace than to an educational institution. This was the usual course of things, and when once the college was founded, the Jesuits naturally had the game all in their own hands, as, for the most part, the whole youth of the population flocked to them for education. For, to attain their object, they usually formed in their college 3 classes or grades of instruction. First of all, the elementary school, then the middle school, and lastly, the higher school. In the elementary school was taught merely the primary groundwork, reading, writing, and to a certain extent accounts, but more especially the faith, that is to say, strict obedience to the teaching and practices of the Roman Catholic Church, as well as abhorrence of all heretical innovations. In the middle school were placed those who were destined to be instructed ordinarily during a period of 9 years in the Greek and Latin grammar, and then advanced to a 2-year course of rhetoric. But religious instruction was here, again, the principal topic, and each of the pupils was imbued with a veneration for the papacy and Catholic priesthood, as well as with hatred against all recreants and heretics, salient characteristics of the Roman Catholic faith. In the high school, the students received the finishing stroke of their studies during a 3-year course of philosophy, or, more properly speaking, of logic and metaphysics, followed by a 4-year course of theology, regarded by them as the absolute queen of all sciences. As regards medicine and jurisprudence, the sons of Loyola did not usually meddle, but what they regarded as of transcendent importance when they were destined to the priesthood was readiness in making use of their tongues, as well as dexterous behavior and being taken suddenly by surprise. The reader must now then readily admit, when things were so far advanced, that the Jesuits must have obtained an enormous influence over the Catholic community in Europe by the establishment of their educational institutions. In religious matters they taught, indeed, all who were educated by them, whether lay or ecclesiastical, just exactly what suited them, and nothing else. And afterwards, laymen as well as ecclesiastics worked in their avocations according to their spirit.
Boy, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting. Huh?
Yes. Very
Interesting to see how they founded and infiltrated the complete education system in Europe, and let me tell you, in the same way they did that in the United States of America, in the same way.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed. Georgetown University, when you're talking about, these big, huge,
boys'
fancy
school. It
schools.
started out as a boys' boarding school, Georgetown. Yeah, and we just saw where the family of George W. Bush came from, where his great-grandfather came from Stonyhurst. This Stonyhurst College began that way because it's the oldest Jesuit training institution in the UK, as we just learned. Yeah. Therefore, I thought this was a little but important excursion from the book Cold War Babylon into this.
Oh,
I mean,
that's very fitting at this time, too.
Yeah, I thought so. Any comments of you, Michael?
Yes, considering the complete book, Cold War Babylon, I'm getting the impression that nowadays you don't achieve that high position in society if you're not into the Catholic dogma, or even, of course, the Jesuit infiltrated Catholic dogma. And I think that works out very well in that book of Griesinger. And that's the impression I get if I'm getting deeper and deeper into the study of the Code Word Babylon, that everything is connected. And so it's highly unlikely that you will find some politician, president, or whatsoever who's not infiltrated with that.
That's right. You will not find any president, chancellor, prime minister, or whatever, who has not been Jesuitically educated. Absolutely. Okay, then I'm going to continue on page 347 with the next underchapter that calls Presidents Kneel in Homage, or homage. What is that? How do you say that in English?
That's homage. Yep, that's right.
Homage, yeah. Yep. Okay. Presidents kneel in homage before the dead Pope. On June 9, 2007, President George W. Bush Jr. met privately with Antichrist Pope Benedict XVI at the Vatican. Both men exchanged gifts. Oh, yeah, we learned about that with Tom Frass, right? Why did the President of the United States of America go to Rome to meet the King of the Vatican? What did Bush and Benedict say to each other during those 35 minutes of closed-door discussions in the Pope's private library? Consider also the significance of Pope Benedict's message gift to the U.S. Commander-in-Chief, a rare first edition of the autobiography of Archbishop John Carroll of Baltimore. Carroll was the first Catholic bishop in the United States and founder of the first Jesuit university in America, Georgetown University. Yeah, but what gift did George W. Bush give the Antichrist?
I remember now, Jörg.
a walking stick with engraved the 10 Commandments.
Yes, it was made by a homeless man here in America. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he got his blessing from the Antichrist.
Well, maybe, yeah, but it's about the gift that he gave. That he gave the Pope, and this is not recorded here in this book, so it's just recorded here that the Pope gave him a first edition of the autobiography of Archbishop John Carroll of Baltimore. Yeah. Seeing so many of the world's leaders kneeling with hands clasped as if worshipping before the bier of the dead John Paul II, Robert Hicks commented, quote, "Observing the many government leaders gathered at the Vatican for the funeral of Antichrist Pope John Paul II, we might well have suspected that the world's politico-military chieftains need what the Pope has more than the Pope needs what they have." Unquote. According to eyewitness reports, the Pope's funeral brought together, quote, the single largest gathering of heads of state in history, surpassing the funeral of Winston Churchill. In a historical rarity, Protestant and Eastern Orthodox Christian leaders, as well as leaders in Judaism and Islam, offered memorials and prayers, and the Archbishop of Canterbury was present at the papal funeral for the first time since the Church of England broke with the papacy in the 16th century, unquote. That, of course, is a result of the working of the Ecumenical Second Vatican Council of 1962 through 1965. This brings us back nicely to the question of why Bush said in his autobiography, "In my senior year at Yale, I joined Skull and Bones, a secret society so secret I can't say anything more," unquote. Why not, Mr. Bush? Intelligent reader, is that not a fair question to ask the president of the greatest nation on earth? Why can't Mr. Bush give us an answer? Now, George W. Bush would have us to believe that Skull and Bones is merely a footnote in his past, that he has had nothing to do with the order after graduating from Yale. However, in 1971, needing a job, Bush called a bonesman, Robert H. Gow, who later told the Washington Post that his Houston-based agricultural company had not been looking for anyone at the time, hired Bush as a management trainee. In 1977, when Bush formed Arbusto Energy, his first company, he applied to Skull and Bones for financial aid. With assistance from his uncle Jonathan Bush, a bonesman too, he lined up $565,000. One of them contributed $93,000. The venture capitalist William H. Draper III, also a bonesman, and 12 bonesmen gave in total $35,500 to Bush's 1998 Goober National Company. At least 46 bonesmen have given $1,000 apiece to his presidential campaign, the maximum allowed by law. There is the proof. Or, as you can also say, the proof is in the pudding, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Besides, how can the American people be sure that Bush hasn't taken an oath to the superiors of his order which conflicts with his duties as president? In the words of President John F. Kennedy, quote, "The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths and secret proceedings. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program," unquote. And John F. Kennedy was also lying at that moment because he was a Knight of Columbus and also under an oath. So don't put John F. Kennedy on a pedestal here. Yes, we have good reason to fear Mr. Bush and his dual loyalty. For we have evidence that tends to prove President Bush Jr. is a secret Catholic. Yeah, he's a Knight of the Eucharist, right? As we established already with the reading that he's taking the eulogia during the initiation in Skull and Bones. Yeah. We saw his submission to Antichrist Pope Benedict XVI in April 2008 when he pulled, quote, out all the stops, driving out to a suburban military base to meet Pope Benedict XVI's plane, bringing a giant audience to the South Lawn and hosting a fancy East Room dinner. Bush had never before given the visiting leader the honor of picking him up at the airport, unquote. The ceremony featured the U.S. and Holy See anthems, a 21-gun salute, and the U.S. Army Old Guard fife and drum corps, unquote. Now, Brett, what's the video that Tom Friess made about it? You have that on your channel, right?
I sure do. Yeah, that is the papal takeover of the United States.
Yeah, so make sure that you will put the link to that video in the description box of this video that people can watch that. I have that also on my channel. It's a wonderful video that you have to see, where Tom Friess absolutely to the point analyzes the visit of the Antichrist in 2008, which of course, and is not even mentioned here, was in remembrance of the bicentennial anniversary of the bishopric of John Carroll when he was made a archbishop in 1808.
That's right.
In Baltimore. Yeah, and that was for the 200 years, or the bicentennial commemoration of that. That's why the Pope was over here. And by the way, he was there in April during the same time that was the birthday of Adolf Hitler. So there were many reasons. There were many reasons for that Antichrist to be there in 2008.
Yeah.
Now, Daniel Burke writes in the Washington Post, quote, "This Protestant president," sorry, this quote-unquote Protestant president has surrounded himself with Roman Catholic intellectuals, speechwriters, professors, priests, bishops, and politicians. These Catholics, and thus Catholic social teaching, have for the past 8 years been shaping Bush's speeches, policies, and legacy, unquote. Burke adds, if Bill Clinton can be called America's first black president, some say George W. Bush would well be the nation's first Catholic president. Yes, there was John F. Kennedy, but where Kennedy sought to divorce his religion from his office, Bush has welcomed Roman Catholic doctrine and teachings into the White House and based many important domestic policy decisions on them. I think it is quite interesting that we go into a little explanation here, that we remind our listeners and viewers of this video that before John F. Kennedy was elected, he went from how did he do that? He went from Washington, where he lived, to Texas to assure Protestant leaders that he would not enforce papal agenda if elected, even though he was Catholic. And that's why he got the support of the Protestants to be elected president in 1961, if I'm not mistaken. George W. Bush in 1999, before being elected president, did the same opposite, came from Texas, where he lived, to Washington, D.C., to affirm to all the Catholic leaders over there that he would surely follow the Pope's agenda if being elected, even though officially he was, quote-unquote, Protestant. Rick Santorum, the former U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania, a devout Catholic and Knight of Malta, by the way, opined, quote, "I don't think there's any question about it. The Catholic president label, he's certainly much more Catholic than Kennedy," unquote. You can read that in the Washington Post, 13th of April 2008. Daniel Burke confirms, quote, "Former Bush speechwriter Michael Gerson, another evangelical with an affinity for Catholic teaching, says that the key to understanding Bush's domestic policy is to view it through the lens of Rome." Paul Weyrich, an architect of the religious right, goes even further. He says he detects in Bush the same mindset as former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, who converted to Catholicism in 2007. "I think he is a secret believer," says Weyrich. Similarly, John DiIulio, is that right? John DiIulio?
Yep. Sounds
Bush's first director of faith-based initiatives, has called the president a closet Catholic. And the rumors are coming from the Vatican too. The Catholic news agency confirms, quote, "Bush may be considering converting to Catholicism at the end of his presidential term." Bush's political advisor invited Catholic intellectuals, or Jesuits, to Texas to explain the teachings of the church to the president, unquote. Proof comes from other sources as well. Mr. Bush was publicly photographed at a mass folding arms as he received ashes traced on his forehead in the shape of a cross from a Catholic bishop on the Catholic holy day, Ash Wednesday. Bush was also at a mass in the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle, Washington, D.C., April 2nd, 2005. Reader, George W. Bush Jr. has now openly returned to the faith of his great-grandfather George Herbert or Bert Walker and his ancestors. You will recall Bert was trained at the Jesuit College of Stonyhurst, and only a few decades ago the entire Bush family were staunch Roman Catholics. Bush is a secret Catholic who has never strayed from his master's side, the Pope ad majorem Dei Gloria. Perhaps the clearest evidence of President George W. Bush's submission to the Pope and his allegiance to the Papal Church was seen on April 15, 2008, when Bush gave an extensive interview with Eternal World Television Network, or EWTN, which is a Catholic station. EWTN anchor Raymond Arroyo, using the present tense, asked Mr. Bush concerning the apostolic visit of the Pope. Quote, "When you look into Pope Benedict XVI's eyes, what do you see?" Unquote. To which Mr. Bush replied immediately and without any hesitation, "God."
Yes, I know that video.
There, what more proof do you want? Yeah, Brad put that in one of the last uploads he had.
Yeah.
That interview. It starts actually with Raymond
With
Arroyo
Putin.
saying, Mr. President, you said famously when you looked at Vladimir Putin's eyes that you saw a soul. When you looked at Benedict XVI's eyes, what do you see? God. That's how the interview went. Yeah, interesting part. Now
that wasn't televised on every program here in the United States. You got to dig hard to find that one.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
EWTN is more of an internet channel, is it?
Yeah, that's right.
And you can get it in America via satellite, I guess, right?
I guess so, but it's really, really low key. It's not like I think the Catholics that are really, really in tune with the Catholic Church watch that, I guess.
Yeah.
So
it's not like CNN. Catholic News Network.
No, much smaller.
As Catholic priest D.S. Phelan, a noted authority on canon law and an attorney in his day, proudly declared, quote, "The Pope is the ruler of the world. All the emperors, all the kings, all the princes, all the presidents of the world are as these altar boys of mine." Unquote. We started with that quote already in the reading of the chapter some pages ago.
Yeah, that's from June 27, 1912, from the Western Watchman. That was D.S. Phelan, a priest, who said that.
Yeah. Are you still scratching your head, wondering to whom do the bonesmen take their secret oath of allegiance, or why Bush said in his book, "In my senior year, I joined Skull and Bones, a secret society so secret I can't say anything more"? Perhaps Mr. Bush's reticence is, as Bill Cooper says, quote, "Members of the order take an oath that swear allegiance only to the order and its goal of a new world order," unquote. Taken from Behold a Pale Horse by the late Milton William Cooper, who was killed on the 5th of November in 2001. Yes, the 5th of November. Remember the gunpowder plot, a day never to be forgot.
Man, we're really getting into some really good material here, but we've reached an hour, Jörg.
Yeah, I know we've reached an hour, but we only have one page. We only have one page to go, so I'm
let's
going to
finish up.
this, of course.
Let's do it.
The renowned and legendary Kabbalist Plato revealed even more about the objectives of these secret societies. And this again is a repetition of the quote this chapter started with. Quote, "To assist in keeping up the deception, we will form secret societies and clubs. And so, by fair means or by foul, we shall gain our ends and carry on our dishonest proceedings with impunity." Unquote. You see, The oath taken by Bush while lying in a coffin and by other bondsmen require them to disregard all bonds of allegiance to father, mother, brothers, sisters, relations, friends, or to the king, magistrates, or country, and any other authority to which loyalty, obedience, or service may have been sworn. The initiate must swear faithfulness and everlasting obedience to all the superiors and the order, and must reveal to their chiefs whatever may have seen or done, read or heard, learned or surmised, and must seek to gain financial and social power and to place them at the disposal of the group. It is little wonder that President Ulysses S. Grant warned Americans, quote, "All secret, oath-bound political parties are dangerous to any nation, no matter how pure or how patriotic the motives and principles which first bring them together," unquote. Thus, we have good cause to fear the Jesuits and their Illuminati acolytes, bondsmen, Rhodes Scholars, Phi Beta Kappa, Masons, and so on and so on and so on, whose sole aim is to place men in high office, as advisors to presidents, as congressmen, senators, White House aides, Supreme Court judges, and of president, to further their secret oath-bound purposes. As Milton William Cooper again warns, quote, "According to the oath Bush took when he was initiated into Skull and Bones, his oath of office as President of the United States means nothing," unquote, because it is done with mental reservation and equivocation. And so we are not surprised when respected law professor Judge Andrew P. Napolitano tells us in his book, Constitutional Chaos, that there is a pernicious and ever-expanding pattern of government abuse in America, that the machinery of the government are inexorably grinding away at the individual liberties guaranteed by the Constitution, and that the government is using the war on terror as an excuse to sidestep the Constitution, often arresting without warrant, spying without legal authority, imprisoning without charge, and killing without cause. That brings us to a conclusion of chapter 34 of Code Word Babylon, and next time I'm glad to open up on page 352, chapter 35, A Novus Ordo Seclorum, a Jesuit Masonic enterprise. These were two very intense readings of chapter 34 about the Skull and Bones, and of course I put in a little bit extra with the excursion I took into the Griesinger book, which I hope that you have understanding for, and you will look up that book for yourself and read that for yourself. Griesinger was a Roman Catholic for a part of his life. He was a German but lived for some years in the United States of America, and then later returned to Germany and then wrote this wonderful book on the Jesuits and their beginnings. An absolute must read, in my opinion. And I'm reading that in German for the moment right now, and I don't know if I ever have the time to do the same in English, but I will surely continue with Cold World Babylon, and I will leave the closing remarks to my two brothers in Christ, Michael and Brett. For me, thanks for watching and listening and commenting. Until next time, Maranatha.
Okay, thank you, Jörg, for this brilliant reading, and I hope it was for the listeners as fascinating as for me. And I was wondering if anyone has the same idea, because I got in mind that there is a chapter in the Matthew, actually it's Matthew chapter 4, where Jesus has been tempted by the devil, and the devil asked him or showed him on an exceeding high mountain all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them, and said to him, "All these things I will give thee if thou wilt fall down and worship me. And you see, what else is the president of the United States but the king of the USA? So the connection to the Antichrist is quite obvious to me. And
can I say something there?
Yeah.
When you really want to understand that correctly, of course, Satan offered this to Jesus Christ, and Jesus, of course, reclined 3 times. Yeah.
Yes.
He said, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God." He said, "It is written again, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God." And he said, "Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him alone shalt thou serve." So Jesus Christ reclined the offer Satan gave him, because he knew he was getting a better offer anyway by his Father when he went to the cross. No, Satan then looked for somebody who wanted to accept the offer, who wanted to be the ruler of the world in his place. And that is the Antichrist. That is the office of the papacy today.
Yeah, and I express, in my opinion, the president of the United States is one of the 10 kings.
Well, the second beast of Revelation 13 for sure. Yeah. That's right.
And I also think, if I may add this remark, is if you look at all these chapters in the Code with Babylon and other fascinating books that Jörg and Brett has published on their channels, for me personally, it's very important to switch to the Bible to get a balance, because it's so much so much interesting information, but on the other hand it's also very negative to hear all this, and so
that's the intention of this, of course.
I enjoy reading the Bible, and it calms me down, because then I'm aware of the true word of God, and so I need that often after I have listened to these readings on the YouTube internet, because it's so much information and so much negative in there, and so I like to get the balance in life with reading the Bible. These are my closing remarks.
Yes.
Well, that's absolutely right, Michael. And I just have to come in and give another closing remark on what you just said. That's why we often end our readings of Code Word Babylon reminding the reader that the first book they have to study is the Bible. And to get a better understanding of the prophecies and the doings of and the sayings of the Bible, you can read secular books like Code Word Babylon, like Rulers of Evil, like Roman Civil Liberty, like Romanism and the Reformation, like Global Vatican, and all these books. They are there to help you to get a deeper understanding. But when you say that after reading this, you have the urge to read the Bible, I can fully understand that, and I even applaud you to do that. And never forget to very first read the Bible only when you are standing on a very solid foundation. The only solid foundation to be found in this world, the Word of God. You can even deal with all the negativity that is being put out in books like Code Word Babylon. I agree.
Okay.
All right, very well. Thank you very much, Jörg and Michael, for coming on board and being a part of the reading today. And I really appreciate all the efforts you do there, Jörg, for getting the motivation to read this most intriguing book we just read. And thank you, all of my listeners and subscribers as well. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time. And if you two don't have any more closing remarks, that will wrap up the program for today. God bless and bye-bye, everybody.
That for the first time in human history, for the first time in all of human history, almost all of mankind is politically awake. And these new and old major powers face still yet another novel reality, in some respects unprecedented. And it is that while the lethality of their power is greater than ever, their capacity to impose control over the politically awakened masses of the world is at a historical low. I once put it rather pungently, and I was flattered that the British Foreign Secretary repeated this, as follows. Namely, in earlier times, it was easier to control 1 million people, literally. It was easier to control 1 million people than physically to kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. It is easier to kill than to control.
We're at the very beginning stages of a very brutal and bloody conflict. And I believe that we've come horribly off track in the years since the fall of the Soviet Union. And we're starting now in the 21st century, which I believe strongly is a crisis both of our church, a crisis of our faith, a crisis of the West, and a crisis of capitalism.
His son Jesus is here in our midst. His bride, the church, is honored to host an event affirming the dignity of the human person and the sacredness of all human life.
I think Russia is no longer a communist state, first of all. That's very important to realize. It hasn't yet defined itself, however, effectively as a democracy. It is still uncertain.
We're at the very beginning stages of a very brutal and bloody conflict, of which if the people in this room and the people in the church do not bind together and really form what I feel is an aspect of the church militant, if the people in this room and the people in the church do not bind together and really form what I feel is an aspect of the church militant, to really be able to not just stand with our beliefs, but to fight for our beliefs against this new barbarity that's starting, that we will literally eradicate everything that we've been bequeathed over the last 2,025 years.
You didn't mention the president by name, but it was hard not to conclude that that's who you were referring to. Is that fair?
I was certainly referring to the threats that we are now facing with this stated goals of this administration, which would upset the last 70 years of a new world order, which was established after World War II. 70 years based on human rights, respect for the law, free trade, all of the things, aspects of this world order that took place after one of the most horrific, terrible wars in history, and I'm for maintaining it.
We are grateful to be citizens of one nation under God, who acclaim this evening that in God we trust. Bless our two candidates, our benefactors, and those whom the L. Smith Foundation has been honored to serve for 7 decades. Guide us safely home, both this evening and for all eternity, through Christ our Lord. Amen.